My manager looked me straight in the eye on my very first day and said, "We're gonna throw you in at the deep end." I smiled, I nodded, and inside I had absolutely no idea what she meant.
And that one sentence is the whole reason we're doing this episode today.
Because native speakers use expressions like this constantly in meetings and coffee shops with friends, and nobody ever stops to explain them.
So today, we're going to walk you through my first job, Jack's first job, and along the way, we'll show you exact expressions that native speakers use every single day. So the next time someone says something like this to you, you won't just smile and nod, you'll actually understand. Welcome back to Rose and Jack Everyday English. We're so happy you're here. I hope yesterday's episode helped you. Today is day 8 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge. Today's topic is 50 powerful everyday expressions native speakers use.
And I promise you, this is not going to be a boring vocabulary list. We're going to tell you a real story. My story about starting a brand new job, and Rose's story about her very first job, too.
By the end of today's episode, you'll feel much more confident talking about your own work life in English, and you'll understand so many expressions that native speakers use without even thinking about it.
So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Okay, so I have to tell you about my first week at my new company, because honestly, it was a bit of a roller coaster. I walked in on Monday morning feeling confident, thinking, I've got this. And then my manager, Sarah, sat me down and said the words that changed everything. She said, "We like to throw new people in at the deep end here." And I just smiled and nodded like I completely understood, when really inside I was panicking.
Oh no, that's such a classic moment. For anyone listening who doesn't know, when someone says throw you in at the deep end, it means they give you a difficult task immediately without much preparation. So you have to learn very quickly. It's like when you can't swim yet and someone pushes you into the deep part of the pool. You have to figure it out fast.
Exactly, and that's precisely what happened. By lunchtime on my first day, I was already leading a meeting with clients I had never met before. I remember thinking, this is definitely a steep learning curve. Have you ever experienced something like that, Rose, where you had to learn something really fast with almost no time to prepare?
Actually, yes. My first job was very similar, but in a different way. I remember my first day at the marketing agency. I was so nervous that I arrived 30 minutes early and just sat in my car outside the building trying to calm down. When I finally walked in, my new coworker, Emma, came over and said, "Let's make some small talk before the meeting starts so you can relax a bit." And I thought that was so kind of her.
That's such a lovely way to start a new job. I think making small talk is honestly one of the most underrated skills. It seems so simple, just talking about the weather or your weekend, but it really helps break the ice, doesn't it?
Completely. Breaking the ice is so important, especially in a new environment where everyone feels a little awkward at first. Emma and I ended up talking about our commutes and then about coffee, believe it or not. And by the time the meeting started, I felt so much calmer. It's amazing how a 5-minute conversation can completely change how nervous you feel.
I wish someone had done that for me on my first day. Instead, I got thrown straight in the deep end, remember? No small talk, no gentle introduction, just straight into a client meeting. Although, to be fair, by the end of that first week, I actually felt like I was getting the hang of things much faster than I expected.
That's interesting because sometimes being thrown in at the deep end actually helps people learn faster, even though it feels terrifying at first. Did you make any mistakes during that first week? I feel like everyone does, especially when they're under so much pressure.
Oh, absolutely. I made a huge mistake actually. During that very first client meeting, I completely forgot the client's name. I had written it down somewhere, but I was so nervous that my mind just went blank. I ended up calling him Sir for almost the entire meeting, which felt so strange and formal.
That's so relatable, though. When you're under so much pressure, your brain just doesn't work the way it normally does. I remember making a similar mistake in my first month. I sent an email to the wrong person completely, someone with a very similar name, and I only realized after I had already pressed send.
Oh no, what happened after that?
Well, I panicked for about 10 minutes, and then I decided the best thing to do was just be honest about it. I called the person, explained the situation, and apologized. Surprisingly, they were really understanding about it. They actually said, "Don't worry, mistakes happen, we've all been there." That moment taught me that most people are much more forgiving than we expect them to be.
That's such a good lesson, honestly. I think a lot of English learners are afraid of making mistakes when they speak, but mistakes are actually how we learn, both in language and in life. Going back to my job story, after that awkward first meeting, my manager pulled me aside and said, "Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it soon enough." And she was right.
I love that expression, get the hang of it. It basically means you're starting to understand how to do something, usually because you've practiced it a few times. It's such a useful phrase for English learners, too, because honestly, getting the hang of a new language takes time and practice, just like getting the hang of a new job.
Exactly, and I think that's the perfect comparison. When I first started learning English years ago, I remember feeling exactly like I did on that first day of my new job, completely overwhelmed, like everyone else understood everything and I understood nothing. But slowly, week by week, I started getting the hang of it.
That's such a good point. Learning a language really is a steep learning curve at the beginning, especially when you're trying to understand native speakers who talk fast and use lots of everyday expressions. But the more conversations you listen to and the more you practice, the easier it becomes.
Speaking of steep learning curves, can I tell you about week 2 at my new job? Because it honestly got even more interesting. My manager asked me to keep an eye on a new project, which meant I had to monitor it carefully and report back to her regularly. The problem was I had never used the software the team was using before.
Oh, that sounds stressful. What did you do?
Well, at first, I tried to figure it out completely on my own because I didn't want to look incompetent in front of my new coworkers. That was actually my biggest mistake. I spent almost 2 full days struggling silently when I could have just asked a simple question and saved myself so much stress.
That's such a common experience, though, especially for people who are new to a job or new to a language. There's this fear of looking silly if you ask for help, but honestly, asking questions is one of the smartest things you can do. What made you finally decide to ask for help?
Eventually, my coworker Tom noticed I looked completely stressed, and he said, "Hey, are we on the same page about this project?" That question actually gave me the perfect opportunity to admit I was confused. Once I explained the problem, he helped me in about 10 minutes, something that had taken me 2 entire days to struggle with alone.
I love that expression, on the same page. It basically means that two people understand something in the same way and they agree about what needs to happen. It's such a useful phrase for work conversations, but also for everyday life, like when you're planning something with friends or family.
Exactly, and once Tom and I were finally on the same page, everything became so much smoother. I realized that asking questions doesn't make you look weak, it actually makes you look smart because you're trying to understand things properly instead of guessing and making bigger mistakes later.
That reminds me of something similar that happened to me during my first month at the marketing agency. My manager gave me a big project, and she said, "I'll keep an eye on your progress, but feel free to come to me anytime you're not on the same page with what I'm asking for." That reassurance made such a huge difference to how confident I felt.
It's amazing how much a manager's attitude can affect your confidence at a new job, isn't it? I think good managers understand that everyone needs time to adjust, even if they throw you in at the deep end sometimes. Did you ever feel completely relaxed at that job, like you could finally let your hair down?
Oh, that took a while, honestly. For the first few weeks, I was so focused on doing everything perfectly that I never really let my hair down at work. But then we had a team dinner, maybe 2 months after I started, and everyone was laughing and joking, and for the first time, I finally felt like I could relax and just be myself.
I think that's such an important moment in any new job, when you finally let your hair down and stop feeling like you have to be perfect all the time. For me, that moment happened during a Friday afternoon meeting, when someone made a joke about our manager's terrible handwriting, and everyone burst out laughing, including our manager herself.
That's so nice, though, when the whole team can laugh together like that. It really shows that even though work can be stressful and even though you might get thrown in at the deep end sometimes, there's still room for fun and connection with the people around you.
Absolutely, and I think that connects perfectly to learning English too. So many learners put so much pressure on themselves to speak perfectly all the time that they forget language learning should also be enjoyable. You have to let your hair down sometimes, make mistakes, laugh about them, and just keep speaking.
I completely agree. Looking back now, if I could give advice to myself on that very first nervous day at the marketing agency, I would say relax, make small talk, ask questions when you're confused, and don't be afraid to admit when you're not on the same page with someone. Those simple things would have saved me so much unnecessary stress.
For me, I think I tell myself something similar. I'd say, yes, they're going to throw you in at the deep end, but you will get the hang of it faster than you think. Looking back now, after 3 months at that job, I actually became one of the most confident people on that team, all because I pushed through that difficult first week.
That's such a powerful lesson, honestly, for work and for learning English. Sometimes the situations that feel the most overwhelming at the beginning become the experiences that build your confidence the most. And I think that's true for anyone listening right now who feels nervous about speaking English in real conversations.
Definitely. If you're watching this episode because you want to improve your English speaking and finally feel confident in everyday English conversation, just remember, every native speaker you admire once felt exactly like a beginner too. Nobody gets the hang of a new skill without going through that uncomfortable learning curve first.
That's such a beautiful way to end this part of the story. Whether you're starting a new job or you're on day 8 of your B1 to B2 English challenge, the message is the same. Keep going, keep practicing, ask questions when you're not on the same page, and eventually you'll look back and realize just how far you've come. Okay, so now let's slow down for a moment and really look at some of the expressions we used in our stories today, because I know a few of them might have gone by quickly.
Let's start with the one that started this whole episode, to throw someone in at the deep end. This means giving someone a difficult task right away without much preparation, so they have to learn quickly.
A common mistake learners make is saying throw someone in the deep end without at. The correct form is throw someone in at the deep end. A more natural example would be, on my first day of university, they threw me in at the deep end and asked me to give a presentation immediately.
Next, to get the hang of it. This means you're starting to understand how to do something, usually after some practice. For example, learning to cook Italian food was hard at first, but after a few weeks, I really got the hang of it.
A small mistake learners often make is saying get the hang without of it. Remember, it needs both parts, get the hang of something. So you could say get the hang of the software or simply get the hang of it.
Then we have a steep learning curve. This describes a situation where you have to learn a lot very quickly, and it usually feels difficult. For example, moving to a new country was a steep learning curve for me, especially learning how everything worked.
One thing to remember here is that a steep learning curve is not always negative. It can also be exciting because you're growing and improving very fast, even though it feels challenging in the moment.
Let's talk about to make small talk. This means having a light, friendly conversation about simple topics like the weather or your weekend, usually to feel more comfortable with someone. For example, before the interview started, we made small talk about the traffic outside.
A more natural way learners can use this is saying, let's make some small talk, just like Emma said to me on my first day. It's a lovely, friendly way to invite someone into a relaxed conversation before something more serious begins.
Related to that is to break the ice. This means doing something or saying something to make people feel more comfortable, especially at the beginning of a meeting or a new relationship. For example, the teacher asked us a funny question to break the ice on the first day of class.
A common mistake is confusing break the ice with make small talk. They're similar, but breaking the ice often means one specific action or question that reduces awkwardness, while making small talk is more general, everyday conversation.
Now, one of my personal favorites is to be on the same page. This means two people understand something the same way, or they agree about a plan. For example, before we start the project, let's make sure we're on the same page about the deadline.
This expression is incredibly useful in daily life, at work, with friends, even with family. You can simply ask, are we on the same page? Anytime you want to check that everyone understands the same thing.
Let's finish with to let your hair down. This means to relax completely and stop worrying about being perfect or formal. For example, after the exam's finished, we finally let our hair down and celebrated all weekend.
A mistake some learners make is using this expression too literally, thinking it's only about actual hair. Remember, it's about relaxing your behavior, your mood, and letting go of stress, not about your hairstyle at all.
And finally, to keep an eye on something. This means watching or monitoring something carefully. For example, my manager asked me to keep an eye on the new project, so I checked it every single day.
All of these expressions are things native speakers use constantly without even thinking about it, which is exactly why they can feel confusing when you first hear them.
Let's talk about a few mistakes B1 learners often make with expressions like these.
The first common mistake is translating expressions word for word from your own language. For example, some learners say, "He threw me in the water of difficulty." That sentence doesn't exist in English at all. The correct expression is, "He threw me in at the deep end." Native expressions can't always be translated directly. They need to be learned as a full phrase.
Another common mistake is forgetting small words like of or at inside these expressions. For example, I finally got the hang it. The correct sentence is, I finally got the hang of it. These little connecting words matter more than learners often expect.
A third mistake is using formal vocabulary in casual conversations. For example, "I would like to converse with you casually before the meeting begins." That sounds very stiff and unnatural. A native speaker would simply say, "Let's make some small talk before the meeting starts." Everyday English is usually much simpler than learners expect.
And finally, learners sometimes avoid using these expressions completely because they're afraid of using them incorrectly. But the truth is, native speakers appreciate the effort even if you make a small mistake. The more you practice, the more naturally these expressions will come out.
Now here's today's comment challenge. We want you to think about your very first day at a job, a school, or even a new city.
Using at least one expression from today, tell us your story in the comments below. Did someone throw you in at the deep end? Did you make small talk to break the ice? Or maybe it took you a while to finally let your hair down?
Write your answer in English, even if it's just 2 or 3 sentences. This is real, everyday English practice, and it genuinely helps you improve your English speaking so much faster.
Thank you, friends, for listening to our today's episode. I hope you learned something from it.
We're so proud of you for showing up again today. That's day 8 already, and every single day you practice, your English speaking gets stronger, even if it doesn't feel like it yet.
Don't miss tomorrow's episode, Day 9 of the B1 to B2 Challenge. Subscribe now so you don't fall behind, because every episode builds on the last one.
If today's episode helped you, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave your comment about your own first day story.
See you tomorrow, friends.